right, looks like we've got everybody joining us. Really quickly, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fifth installment of Ohio University's Sports Gambling Education webinar series. My name is Scott Shelton. I'm the Education Media Manager here at Sina Education Services, and I'm truly excited for today's webcast, which is titled Sports Betting and College Basketball, Everything We Learned from the Pandemic-Impacted Football Season. So before we get started, just want to give you two quick announcements. One, our third course is now available. That's SGE 301. It's titled Innovations and Insights from Sports Gambling Stakeholders, and it's available as either a standalone course or as the final class in the three-course bundle. So our lecturers there include Basil DeVito of the XFL, Steve Passerino from US Integrity, and Robert Walker from US Bookmaking. So if you want to take a look at that, there's a list of all the educational topics and modules at sportsgamblingeducation.com. Second announcement, real quick, just for attending this webinar, we're offering you a tuition discount code good for 30% off of any course purchase. That's individual courses or the three-course master certification bundle. The code is WEB1124. That's WEB1124. And I'll be sure to add that coupon code into the chat section of the webinar today. So again, thank you all for joining us. Without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to our host today. He's the founder and president of US Integrity, Mr. Matt Holt.
Thanks, Scott, and thank you everybody for attending. I think we have a really fun and interesting panel today, and kind of going over college basketball, where we were when this pandemic started, right about to go into March Madness, and then where we are now. And I think we have an interesting panel from the athletic administrator standpoint to the bookmaker standpoint and how we're all affected by the pandemic. And we have an amazing panel today with Aaron Woliczko from WCC, the Senior Associate Commissioner of Men's Basketball and Sports Administration at the West Coast Conference, and then Jay Kornegay, the Vice President of the SuperBook Operations. And I think this is an interesting topic, and we've kind of seen it in football. Nobody knew what to expect, and we've seen all these canceled games and the information flow be a lot different than normal. But let's take a step back just for a minute. And so, Aaron, you guys were one of the first conferences to actually complete your conference tournament back in March. Why don't you take us back to that conference tournament, what it was like for you guys, and what the pandemic effect having actually completed that conference tournament.
Yeah, no, thanks, Matt, and thanks for having me, and Jay, good to meet you. But it was very interesting times. Obviously, we know a lot more now about what's been going on with the pandemic since March of last year. And it was just amazing, the updates that we were getting from local health authorities in Vegas, because that's where our championship tournament is, in Las Vegas. And it wasn't, even back then, it wasn't just a daily update, it was hourly. Our commissioner was getting those in the morning, getting them mid-afternoon, and getting them again in the evening. And so we were, at the time, we were getting a lot of information of how to help and possibly, if we needed to, postpone or cancel our tournament. And obviously there was a lot going on around the country too with the other tournaments at that time. We finished on a Tuesday, and I remember being in the airport with my dad on Wednesday and getting basically the update that everything was getting shut down. But we did get it in because we were one of the earlier tournaments. We finished on the Tuesday prior to the selection Sunday. So that really benefited us.
And I remember being in Nashville that week for the SEC tournament. We had meetings Monday and Tuesday, and Wednesday morning I was supposed to present, and then everything got canceled, all the meetings, and I never ended up presenting anything, just sat around the hotel all day. And we went to the games that night, and I remember being, the SEC played that first night, Wednesday night, the two play-in games sort of, And then that was it. And as those games were going on, literally, it seemed like every 20 minutes, it was another conference tournament canceled or another one postponed. Just, it was literally almost minute by minute then. Jay, why don't you talk about from the bookmaker standpoint? I mean, the chaos, I mean, having odds to win each conference tournament and March Madness and all the individual game wagering and, what kind of chaos it played for you all.
Well, sorry, Aaron. First of all, Aaron, yes, it's nice to meet you. But I'm a Mountain West guy, just that you know. I'll come clean. In fact, we were one of the few conferences that actually were able to complete, our tournament here in Las Vegas, as I have some colleagues and friends that from the Mountain West Conference visit every year and come in, and we just finished up. And then I was about ready to go over to see the Pac-12 games. And I believe it was either Tuesday or Wednesday when Colorado was playing Washington State. It was that night, and the news was breaking, and my friend had courtside seats, and I had to pass them up because I didn't know what to think at that time. But there was, obviously there was a lot of precautions that everybody was taking, and that affected the sports books as well, as we had to refund a lot of different things. And at that point in time, we didn't know exactly what was ahead. It was obviously not what we expected. We thought it was going to be a couple of weeks or something. But I believe the last college basketball game was played March 11th. And here we are on the doorstep of the next season. And hopefully we can get through that with games starting tomorrow. And we have we have a really good slate for tomorrow, but it's already started, and this is what we have seen in the college football season. We already have about 10 games that have either been postponed or canceled, but we still have majority of them playing at this time. So I think, we're going to proceed with caution. We just want to make sure that everybody understands the rules and everybody understands, the books are being as transparent as they possibly can, and making sure that everybody understands what they're betting into. So right now, going into the season, we only have odds to win the championship. Normally, we would have some other things up, like teams to make the Final Four. We would, have possibly conference odds, those type of things. But because of all the uncertainty, we decided to leave those off going into this season.
And for a market like, odds to win the national title, after thinking what happened last season and all the schedule changes that are possible, Jay, did you guys have to sort of leave that open rather than say who will be the champion on this specific date? Just kind of leave it as who will win the national championship, basically, as long as they play it in 2021 or something like that? Because, it's so hard to stick to a schedule now, as we know.
Yeah, we have, changed, and added some disclaimers and stipulations just to make sure that everybody understands it. Like for this event, the 2021 national championship, we actually have a disclaimer that says, and I'll read it right to you, that the NCAA tournament must conclude by August 1st of 2021. We don't want to hold everything up, but then again, we don't want to refund everybody because you have such a mixed emotion of players out there. Some players that bet like Ohio State last year or something, or someone that really struggled that ended up to be a bad bet. They're very happy to get a refund. All those Dayton tickets that we had last year, they're not so happy about getting a refund. So we see both sides of it. And again, we just try to be transparent. It's not a subjective decision. We have to make decisions for everyone. No one's special. No one's singled out. Every decision that we make is for, the greater good and for everybody.
Matt, on scheduling, can I jump in real quick and ask Jay?
Sure.
It's kind of maybe a basic question, at least in my mind, but game time changes. Something just you talked about the big picture with the national championship, but how does it affect the books when at the last second game times are adjusted? And I mean, whether it's a day ahead or even game day where you're moving from a 7 p.m. game to a 3 p.m. game, and you might not be getting all the wagers in that you might expect. And Jay, you're muted there.
I haven't done that in 2 days. It's a good question, because we obviously we have a lot of that, and we're going to see that a lot going forward for this college basketball season. Our rule that addresses that actually was in place prior to COVID-19, in that these particular events must be played within 8 days. So if they change the time, it's not a big deal for us. Obviously, if something changed from 7 p.m. and all of a sudden they're going to play at 3 p.m., all the the players, the bettors that are coming in after work ready to bet that game might get shut out. Obviously, we don't want to see that. But there are games that will be postponed for a couple of days or moved. We have geographical rules that if they play within that geographical area, it's still action. It might be a different arena, but that's still action. But if they move out of that geographical area, for example, let's say Kentucky was hosting Tennessee or something at Kentucky, some type of outbreak there, then they decided to go play it at Tennessee. Obviously, that would be a refund and no action, because the line would be totally different than it would have been being played in Kentucky.
No, that's a great point, because I know that we have some schools that their plan B is being able to play at a different venue at a nearby county that is allowing. So if all of a sudden their county is putting more restrictions on them for a home game, even though there's no fans or anything, but they put more restrictions on them and not allowing them to play in their home venue, they might move to a county that has less restrictions and things like that. So you make a great point.
Yeah, that does happen in Las Vegas, because we do have a few arenas here as well. Something could move from the MGM to the Thomas and Mack to the Orleans or something like that. That would all be considered still action, despite the arena change. But again, if they were to move from Las Vegas to Reno, or Las Vegas to LA or something like that, then there would be no action on a game like that.
Let's switch gears for a minute and talk about something, talk about some stuff a little integrity related here and that affects bookmakers and you, Aaron, and everybody alike. And that's sort of the flow of information. And even prior to COVID, there was a lot of talks about transparency, injury reporting, and there wasn't any clear-cut rules in the college landscape like there is in some of the professional sports about when, if, or even at all people were obligated to report injuries publicly. Now with COVID, which brings up all kinds of HIPAA issues and other health concerns, what is sort of that whole locker room flow of information been like? Is your role completely changed in that regard?
Well, I think from the conference perspective, we're trying to get the information in as fast as we can. And, sometimes it's a text message from an athletics director saying that they had a positive test. And in basketball, you're going to shut down the entire team, basically the travel party, kind of the inner bubble. And that's your starting point. Where football, you might be able to adjust a little bit more, where you're seeing Trevor Lawrence, for example, he was positive, but the team still played on. Versus in basketball, you're going to see where you're not able to necessarily contact trace out of that situation. So the entire team gets shut down, and you're not playing for 14-day period. Versus Clemson in football was able to play the game, for example, against Notre Dame, even though they didn't have their starting quarterback. So we're trying to gather that information. From an integrity standpoint, there's new people. At least I feel like there's new people involved with getting information. And Matt, you and I discussed a little bit the other day. For example, we're testing officials, and someone that might not normally be, seeing that NCAA don't bet on it. video over and over again, and it gets pounded into your brain that, hey, I need to make sure that I'm on the up and up and doing everything, not sharing the information that I shouldn't be sharing. But now you might have someone who is doing a testing and gaining access to testing results of an official. And depending on the timing of that test, they might only start a game with 2 officials, as an example. And if I'm somebody that has that information, it could be utilized. I was joking with a friend the other day, all of a sudden you have 2 officials and they're not able to cover the entire area. So now down in the post in basketball, it becomes a bloodbath, and they're not able to see it like if you had 3 officials. So now does that change, a potential over to someone betting the unders because there's going to be less free throws in the game? And, obviously I just kind of spitballed it with my buddy, but it's like, these are the things that are going to be coming to light, I believe.
I think that's a great point. And something that Jay's going to have to deal with is the flow of information when one of the officials tests positive. And we know this is going to happen. I mean, it's just going to, they're at the same vulnerability rate as the student athletes. They're out on the court with them. When these officials test positive and at the last minute they're playing games with 2 officials, it's a race to that information. It's Jay's team trying to get that info and the betting syndicates trying to get that info, because you're right, it drastically affects the total and the way the game could be called. What have you seen, Jay, both through college football and now leading into basketball, that might concern you guys from trying to get information? Because I will say this fall, we have had more potential insider information issues. And Aaron brought up a great point, testing people who never had access to insider info before. Suddenly you have these outsiders getting insider info through the testing. And there's so many people now, and it's no longer just injuries, it's injuries, suspensions, and COVID, that there's more cases per game. It feels like it's a race to info almost every week. What have you guys done, Jay, to combat that or deal with this new information age we're dealing with COVID?
Well, information has always been, part of our world, and obtaining that information before others. And because of social media, we have guys, our own members of our own team that, have a Twitter deck on like 2 screens, and all that flow of information. People like they kind of laugh at that. And I said, no, if you follow the right people, okay, I'm not talking about the trollers or the jokesters out there, the people that actually put out quality information. That's where a lot of it breaks first. Not all the time, but a lot of it does. So we'll sit there and scour that information. And this, because of COVID and the pandemic and going into this season, this information is more critical than ever before, because we're having more cases, we're having more tests, we're having more, obviously contact tracing, and the race is to see who's out, okay, and who's the backup, that type of, is it a quality backup? If you go to a quality program, like Kentucky or Kansas or one of the bigs, Gonzaga, sorry, Aaron, and they basically reload, right? Because they got another 4-star, 5-star guy right behind him. But if you go to, let's say, my alma mater, Colorado State, and maybe, we're not able to reload as quickly as some of the others, it could really have a big effect on the spread. So, we look at it as, sometimes we'll have that information prior to the bettors, and sometimes the bettors have that information before we do. But it really depends on if someone comes up and he's a sharp player, and a respected player, and he comes up and he bets Western Carolina, all right, okay, against Wilmington. It's something that we're going to probably look into before we just move it. I mean, we're going to look at it to make sure there wasn't any late breaking news coming out of, Carolina, and making sure that everybody's up and up and there's no information out of Wilmington. Okay, we'll look at it. Now we'll move it. So we take a little extra time, and do our due diligence when a respected player like that comes in and say, hey, we we're going to make sure that there's no COVID issues with one of these teams, and we'll adjust accordingly. So it's a little bit more of a cautious approach than what we've seen in years past.
Aaron, on to another subject that's a little more exciting, but obviously may cause a little bit of trepidation too in a pandemic, is you guys open with the number one team in the country, 353 D1 schools, and number one in the land is Gonzaga. During a situation like this with a pandemic, it has to be amazing and exciting to go into the season with number one, but with so much craziness going on, it probably causes a little bit of anxiety as well.
It definitely causes anxiety, and we're excited for Gonzaga to be the number one team in the land right now. It hasn't happened in the WCC since Bill Russell back at USF in the 50s. So that's putting us back a few years, but we're excited to have the Zags sitting at number one. And if you look at their schedule this year, they have an amazing schedule. They've put together a very, very competitive schedule to make sure that they do at the end of the season, if they can play the majority of these games, have a number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. That was their hope for this schedule. And even as it is adjusted, I mean, they have some tremendous folks that are working on their schedule, because before everything got crazy with scheduling and creating a schedule, they had a great schedule. And as it sits today, even with the pandemic and all the changes that have gone on, they've maintained that. They might not be playing someone like Michigan State anymore, but you see that they're playing number 6 Kansas, basically this week, and they have a bunch of other opportunities that they've been able to create, with some promoters, some MTE multi-team events in Florida, and then in Indianapolis, and really playing some of the top teams in the country, and probably pretty early on, ready to go right now.
And so you guys are in a really interesting, unique scenario. It's sort of what's considered a mid-major WCC. You guys were going to be a 3-bid league last year. And to your point, as we discussed earlier, probably 3 white jerseys in game one, as you were going to have 3 8 or better seeds coming out with BYU, St. Mary's, and Gonzaga last year. So in a year where it's so hard to schedule and the non-con is so crazy, do you think it helps you guys that your league was so strong last year that, hey, everyone's going to kind of be gauged this year on your conference schedule, because nobody's going to have a really robust non-conference schedule? So do you think being a league that was probably definitely a 3-bid league last year adds a lot of strength and increases your chances of potentially getting 2 or 3 bids this year?
Yeah, I would say that the selection committee is working on a moving target right now. And we always hear about the eye test. Obviously, if the season was played out and you could have an objective metric system that you're looking at to be able to select teams, that would be something that would be helpful. But I think in this year, in this pandemic, it's going to be more subjective, and it's going to rely on that quote unquote eye test a little bit more, which within that eye test, I think historical information that I know that the WCC was a multi-bid league, a 3-bid league last year. I think that will help us in the selection room come March.
I agree. And, one of the things I thought was interesting, Jay, that I've been talking a lot this year is the idea that because we're going to have to cram so many games together, teams may have to play, multiple games in back-to-back nights in the same city just to get some games in, that we might see officiating crews, just because they're at the venue doing the same game. Hey, we're going to do Arizona State tonight. We're also going to do Arizona State tomorrow, because we just need to get Arizona State needs to get 2 games in this city. We're not used to seeing that in college basketball. And we know the big betting syndicates out there really study these refs, their biases. Do they tend to call more fouls, less fouls? Does that lead to overs or unders? Do you think you as a bookmaker may have to be a little more cautious putting up totals in some of these back-to-back spots? I always use the MLB as an example, as once you knew that home plate umpire, you knew the next 3 days who the home plate umpire was going to be because they rotate. So you at least go, okay, I know who they're going to be. I can make totals. In this case, knowing, hey, the Arizona State referee crew is going to be the same tonight and tomorrow, is it helpful in making totals, or does it make you guys nervous and putting totals up early on games?
Well, we're not sure.
Yep.
We're going to kind of play it by ear and just see what happens. But our approach would be something very similar to, conference tournaments, because these guys play back to back. You see these guys that come in and players get, familiar with the background, and they're really in a groove, that could shoot a lot better the next night than they did the first night, or maybe even better in the second half than they did the first half. Now, as far as the referees, we're just going to have to see how that goes. But we're not nervous, but it's something that we are going to keep track of and just see if we see any trends there. Obviously, we'll be following some of the respected players, and I know that they'll be doing their deep research and getting into the weeds there to see if there's any angles, and we'll be following that as well.
So we've had a few months of college football, and I think if nothing else, from the NFL, college football, NBA, NHL, the different sports that have gone on, there have been some lessons learned, both from the athletic administrator point and the bookmaking point. And I think probably the biggest lesson is flexibility, right? Nothing is set in stone anymore. Everything changes. But from your world, Aaron, just from what's happened, watching the college football landscape. So, hey, there's collegiate sports being played almost every day now. We actually have a Tuesday morning football game, as I'm sure Jay's aware of, next week. Western Kentucky, Charlotte, that just got moved to Tuesday morning. When's the last time we had a non-bowl game played on a Tuesday morning? So the scheduling's crazy. On your end, Aaron, what do you think? What might be some of the lessons that, or, even if not lessons, key things that you guys have kind of been able to either learn or glean from watching the college football landscape so far?
Well, the key word that we hear over and over again, obviously, is flexibility. And you said it. We have to be as flexible as possible. So as I'm sitting here, I'm getting emails basically saying that there might be game changes. I was obviously talking to Jay before about time changes. That flexibility, we have to be as flexible and as nimble as we can. And there's going to be times, dates that change. And probably the biggest thing that I've learned in the last 2 weeks is that we have some very great folks within our not only our conference that help with the scheduling, but also our coordinators of officials and our officials. Everybody that is involved, everybody that is touched, and that includes the campus folks too that are giving us the information. Everybody is on the same page right now of trying to make sure that we have a season to not get any major curveballs thrown our way. And it's just reinforced really the great people that I've been able to work with, because everybody's on the same page to make every single game have an opportunity to come out and play. And whether that is at the time and date that it was originally set for, or if there needs to be an adjustment, everybody's on that same page and trying to get it done to the best of their ability.
And that's great. And Jay, on your side, I know, look, at the end of the day, what a challenge it's been on the bookmaker side. The bettors don't always understand the flexibility, all the rules, these changes, what they mean. So, I know it's been so much on your side, but if you had to pick up, what are the one or two things that through the college football season that have really stood out to you that you hope you can embrace and build upon during the college basketball season, which starts tomorrow, what would they be?
Well, I'll start with the baseball season, because we, as an operator, took away listed pitchers this year for the first time in 35 years since I've been in the business. We've never had that option where everything was just pure action. And
great move, by the way. I thought that was a really fantastic idea.
Well, we weren't too sure at the beginning. We didn't have a lot of confidence. We didn't know exactly what the feedback was going to be. We thought we'd get a lot of pushback from the players, but it was the total opposite, because there were a lot of changes, a lot of postponements, pitching changes. Obviously, people were just happy to make the bet, and they know they had action. Now, I understand the hardcore, like, people want to know if they get Kershaw or not. We understand that, but most likely he is going to start. However, if there is a change, people still have that action. If they need to get off the game, they can do that. But starting with that, we took the same approach as Aaron did and just mentioned. We have to be flexible. We're not dug in anywhere. We're very light on our feet right now, and we're just trying to adjust as things are thrown at us, and making sure that we're making the right call. And we've already made a few adjustments to some of the stipulations, as I mentioned before. And again, we're just trying to be transparent. We don't want any gotcha moments. We're not here for that. We want to make sure everybody has a fair shake. They understand the rules, and they enjoy betting on sports. And that's the same approach that we're going to take for this college basketball season.
Great. And I just want to kind of get one more and some final thoughts from you guys, because I know we have several questions. So what a lot of people may not realize is the March Madness futures market dwarfs the size of the college football futures market in terms of odds to win it all, and all the different futures that are wagered on in college basketball. And I think a lot of people would be surprised that the college basketball futures market is right there with the NFL. It tends to dwarf the NBA, Major League Baseball. There's so much money and interest and intrigue. And of course, you have 350 D1 teams, so there's a lot of available options there to bet. But what do you think that, going into this year, and let's start with Jay this time, what have you seen in the futures market this year? So usually the buildup right before the start of the season is that first rush of, hey, what can I get on my team or my alma mater? Or who has the best odds? Or who do I think might win it all? Or who's the big long shot I can get it 50-1? Do you think that COVID has had a negative impact on the wagering in that marketplace and its popularity, or do you think it's still been pretty strong?
Well, all future offerings, whether it's the Super Bowl or to win the college football championship, college basketball, it has taken a step back. Okay. And that's understandable. There's just not as many people out and about. We don't have that many tourists that are coming in versus past years. So you would expect, it makes sense. However, sports betting in Nevada and some of these other jurisdictions have taken off, but those are game to game wagers. I think our handle was up in October, like 23%.
Wow.
Year over year. And that's incredible considering what we're going through right now. But the future market, because it's so uncertain what to expect, that has actually dropped a little bit. But the game to game action, it's ahead of pace. The numbers are fantastic. And just to give you a quick overview, I know you're going to love this, Aaron, because we truly believe that the WCC passes that eye test, as you mentioned before. But here are the top contenders this year. And looking at this, and nothing against Gonzaga or all these other top contenders, in my eyes, it looks like there could be 20 to 30 teams that could win this championship this year. That's how wide open it is. And I think that we're going to have a lot of surprises. Everybody knows the Big Ten is loaded, but there's a number of teams in contention. We'll start off with Gonzaga. Gonzaga is 10-1. We have Baylor and Villanova at 14-1. We have Texas Tech at 16, Virginia at 18, Michigan State at 18, Kentucky is now 16 as they continue to get a lot of support as well. But by far, the team that with the most tickets on it, all right, are the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Because we were talking about this yesterday because I was talking about the show and I said, why everybody's betting Gonzaga? I was like, oh my gosh, we opened at 10-1. We're still 10-1. However, it's not even close. Gonzaga by far has the most tickets on them. And it feels like if they don't know who to bet, they'll just go, oh, I'm going to defer to Gonzaga. So good for you, Aaron. There's a lot of respect out there for the WCC.
So, Aaron, I don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, and everybody loves Gonzaga. So we'll start with the Zags. Obviously, they're number one right now. But if you had to look outside the WCC, you watch a lot of college basketball. This feels like a year where that veteran team, bringing back all those starters, having that continuity is going to mean more than ever. Is there one team outside the WCC, maybe even, or even in the WCC outside of Gonzaga, that you think could be a sleeper this year?
I don't know about a sleeper. I think that you look at a lot of the teams that are the who's who of college basketball, and they're at the top end of the rankings right now. But I do think you have a great point about kind of the veteran teams, the senior laden teams. So it kind of asks, it gives the question of, come March Madness, those quote unquote mid-major teams, or the 12 playing the 5 that we always see, are they going to have a better opportunity to create an upset? Because usually what we see at quote unquote that mid-major level, the ones that have the most success are the experienced team. When they get into March Madness, all of a sudden they have a bunch of seniors, 4th, 5th year guys that are playing against maybe some one and doneers, and they've had an opportunity to play over the years, and they're savvy about, their experience, and they have a better opportunity maybe in a pandemic year to be able to get those W's.
Jay, do you have a sleeper that maybe you're looking at, that's someone that you think could surprise some people this year?
Well, as I mentioned before, man, we think there's 20 or 30 teams that can win the national title. It's just so wide open. It's not a huge sleeper. I'm not going to probably go outside of that 20 or 30 team group that I was talking about. One of the teams that I'd like to keep an eye on is Tennessee. Tennessee with Rick Barnes, and I know they had a lot of freshmen, sophomores last year. It wasn't, I think, a couple of years ago that, he led this team to the Elite Eight. I think Tennessee is a team to keep an eye on. Not a deep sleeper, but probably out of that top 10, top 15 range, the Volunteers could surprise some people when it's all said and done.
So Jay, they're playing the Zags on December 2nd, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So
Nice.
So we'll see where that goes.
Okay, yeah, I can't wait. Hey, Aaron, I am a mid-major guy, so I always root for the smaller teams coming from the Mountain West. I'll most likely be rooting for the Zags.
We appreciate it, and obviously with your Colorado State background, I'm assuming that Stu Morrill might have been the head coach there during your time on campus, and he's a great friend and unbelievable coach.
Yeah, that was that was in the 80s. Yes, that was our time. So thanks for dating me. You nailed that, Aaron.
You mentioned one, Jay, that I really looked at this year. And I like a few. I think Illinois is going to be really good with that guard big man combo that they return, and what a coaching job that Brad's done down there, and they expect to be really good. If you're looking at teams maybe in the 20 to 1 plus range, but one that was about 30 to 1 that's down to 15 to 18 to 1 at a lot of places is Texas Tech. They got a top 40 recruit in the country who's, I think it's one of the first or second top 40 recruits they get. And that team is so deep, he's not even going to start. That team is loaded down there. We know Chris Beard, who we had for a week here in UNLV, has done an amazing job down there in Lubbock. And that is a really deep team this year. Now the odds are starting to reflect it. At 30 to 1, they were kind of a sleeper. Now at 15, 16, 18, I think the odds are starting to reflect how good of a talent Chris Beard has. But if we're going mid-majors, maybe a sneaky one back east this year in the Richmond Spiders. We talk about continuity. They return all 5 starters. I think they have 7 seniors on the team, really well coached. The A-10's tough. A lot of times that's a multi-bid league. So getting those games in there against other teams people are used to seeing. If we're looking for a mid-major kind of non-Gonzaga sleeper, maybe the Richmond Spiders this year.
Well, you can get a hefty price on them right now. As I'm looking at it, they're 100 to 1.
There we go. 100 to 1. That's a sleeper.
That's definitely a sleeper. Those Red Raiders, and I think the world of Chris Beard. I think he's just a tremendous coach and doing a fabulous job, obviously, down there. We actually opened them at 14 to 1. Now they are 16 to 1 right now. I think we probably had them a little too low, maybe too much respect, and that's why they've gone up a little bit, just because we haven't received a lot of bets on them. But I'm sure once we get up to like 16, 18, 20 to 1, they're going to get some action. It's going to be really interesting to see the action come in all these teams, because once again, I'll repeat it. It's just wide open this year. And because of what we're going through, I think it's even more wide open than we're thinking heading into the season.
And I think Aaron brought up such an important point, that because we're not going to get a traditional non-conference schedule, getting those eyeballs from the committee on you as many times as you can is going to be so important. And if I was someone looking to take a shot on some Flyers this year, I know Baylor and Texas Tech are kind of, two of the top 10 teams in the country, but think of all the teams that are going to get to play them every week. In the Texases this year, and Shaka Smart, who could be a little better, and Coach Kruger down at Oklahoma. Like, just the fact that they're going to get those ESPN games against the Baylors, against the Texas Techs, who are going to have that big ranking next to them, that could help some of those teams not only get into the tournament, but get better seeding in the tournament. And thus there might be a little more value on it. Same thing with Gonzaga. The fact that BYU is going to get to play them twice and St. Mary's is going to get 2 cracks at them may not only help them get into the tournament, may help them with seeding. Those high profile wins, I think this year are going to be mean more than they normally do.
I totally agree. I just think the sample size is going to be smaller because we already have a lesser number of games. So being able to have those games against someone with that little number next to them in the ranking, I think is huge. And I just kind of to spin off that a little bit, one of the questions was about kind of the football scheduling and being able to schedule, if there are changes, who are you scheduling? And I would say a lot of folks are attempting to schedule, just get a game in. But then there's the other folks that are thinking about seeding and a lot of different things. And if they lose a game that is a high profile game, like you're talking about, Matt, they're going to want to replace it with another high profile game. That's just, scheduling 101. They're going to want to try, especially for the Zags, they're going to want to make sure that that they're putting their best foot forward to get the top overall seed. So I think that's it's kind of two philosophies. Someone that just wants to play a game and go out and get anybody that they can play. But then there's the folks that are really trying to make an impression on the selection committee, and they're going to try to find a similar game that they lost. And if that is a game that is a top 25 game, they're going to go out and try and find someone to fill that void.
That's great. Why don't we get to a couple of questions here? First one for Jay. It says, for this year's college basketball season, how are you adjusting your book strategy in response to the inherent uncertainty? Are you offering lower limits or later post times, or business as usual? You're on mute.
Sorry.
No problem.
Kevin, right now we're heading into this season. I mean, we're being cautious with all the information, but as far as the limits are the same as of right now. We'll see how crazy it gets. Hopefully, there's not too many surprises, not too many curveballs as we proceed. But the limits are going to stay the same. However, we're being very cautious with all the information that's out there, and really, like I said, we're not dug in. We're very light on our feet as we're adjusting as the news comes in with either canceled, postponed games or teams that might still play despite some COVID restrictions. So but limits will stay the same, Kevin.
And Aaron, we had one for you. Did the conference consider a bubble for conference play this year? And if so or not, can you explain why or why you chose not to go with that route?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a great question. One of our our philosophies at the WCC is to be innovative. So we had been talking about a number of different scenarios, and obviously, if you compare what we were looking at to what was going on in the NBA, WNBA in a true bubble, where they had what was it, the whole Disney property. They had a golf course. They had fishing, lake, and the only people that were there were people that were part of the essential to make the NBA happen. They were getting tested. The protocols were really, really good. What we were looking at is more of a single site. Just because it's something that I think makes sense to us. It's not, it wasn't necessarily taking over an entire hotel and site, like I said, like the NBA did. So that was kind of where we ended up as we were looking at that. Quite honestly, I think there was part of the question was the financial situation for many of our schools that charter flights during the course of a season. I think they were actually going to save money, because if we chose one spot to go and say we went to Vegas twice, because it takes a 3-week period to do a full double round robin. So if we broke that up into 2 different segments, 6 weeks plus a little bit of time in between, maybe you're taking 4 flights to, say, a Vegas or somewhere like that to be able to accomplish that. So you're chartering for those 4 legs. Now, during the course of a regular season, you're chartering many more times than that. So when you start crunching the numbers, it actually might have been a little more affordable in cost savings for some of our schools, in all honesty. But at the end of the day, I think the safety measures that are in place on our campuses, those are probably the most safe place right now is within our athletic department, because of the protocols that are going on with our student athletes and our coaches and everybody that's involved. I talked about, the great people that are working around the conference and our campuses, man, they are doing an unbelievable job of keeping these kids safe. They are the protocols that they have in place, the testing. Like I said, our athletic departments right now are probably safer than just about anywhere else, in these counties and these locales, because of the steps that they've instituted for this.
And we all want to thank you. I mean, I think that so many athletic administrators, folks at the universities, at the conferences, don't get enough credit for what an amazing job they're doing and how hard this is to do this amount of testing and this amount of diligence and each and every day to ensure that all their student athletes are safe and healthy, and yet still be able to afford to fly all over the country and play these games so that we as the fans can be entertained and that the student athletes can have this amazing experience and be a part of all this. And I think it's great. And I'm really excited that the season goes on. And, I think everyone understands the flexibility part of it. So I think it's an exciting thing. And you guys probably don't get the credit you deserve for the amount of work it takes to make this happen in a safe way. All right, guys. Well, we have a couple of minutes. If either of you have any final thoughts, I wanted to thank you both again. Look, I'm really excited. College basketball is my favorite sport. For me, it's college basketball, UFC, then college football. But this is my number one, and the season kicks off tomorrow. So I couldn't be any more excited. And we get so many questions about what's the season going to be like? Has all this uncertainty been crazy on the bookmakers? And how does people even make schedules for these teams? So thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you so much, Jay. Any final comments? We'll start with Aaron.
I'm just so excited. I mean, the work that has gone into getting tomorrow tipped off. I think USF Dons are probably, I believe, the first college basketball game back in the Bubbleville at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. I believe they tip off with Stephen F. Austin at 9 a.m. Pacific, 6 a.m. Eastern, if I remember correctly. Sorry, I'm going off memory. But I am just excited about the upcoming season. I know that there's going to be curveballs. I know that there's going to be changes. I'm confident that we can, hit those curveballs out of the park as needed. And man, college basketball, it's a great time of year. Let's go.
Absolutely. I love it. Look forward to working with you guys again this year, and looking forward to another exciting season.
Yeah, we're very
Jay,
thankful
any
for
final
US
thoughts?
integrity.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Now that we have sports betting, expanding to all these different jurisdictions, I just recommend people to make sure that they understand the rules, as some can vary even within the same jurisdiction, as it is out here in Las Vegas. Books have different rules for different situations. So always to double check those, especially if a game is, postponed or canceled. Make sure that you understand, because some of them might have action within 8 days. So if they just postpone it for a couple of days, you would still have action. And then there's other books that might have a rule that it has to take place on the original scheduled date, or it's a refund. So, moving into these uncertain times, and what we experienced so far during this pandemic is that there are a lot of changes with these rules, and different situations might dig up some rules that we haven't seen in a while. So know the rules, talk to your sports book, and make sure you get some clarity, as I know the operators out there want to operate with as much transparency as they possibly can. So do that. And Aaron, it was a pleasure meeting you. We look forward to the college basketball season, and all the best to the WCC.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Jay. Look, I said it earlier and I'll repeat it again. I know that bookmaker job has been so hard. People don't always understand the rules. There's so many changes to schedules and venues and information and players. And I just think you guys have done an amazing job of being transparent, always sticking to what the rules are, making those rules clear, and trying to be as accommodating and keep it as simple as possible for all the bettors. And I know it's not always easy, but you guys have done a great job, man. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, everybody. That's the end of this webinar. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and I'll hand it back to you, Scott.
Excellent. Again, thanks to all of our panelists. I just want to say a recording of the webinar will be available at the SGE YouTube channel. You can simply click on the YouTube icon at the top right corner of our website. And for more information about our program, go check it out at sportsgamblingeducation.com. Thanks, everyone.